America. So what is the average American talking about today? Well, we got the cast of Glee. They've broken records. They have more #1 hits. More than Elvis Presley. That's good. The Kardashians are now making $65 million a year. That's a pretty big one. And can you believe the Westminster Dog Show? That cute little poodle, wasn't he? Yeah. Of course, the world is on fire, and there are three groups of people that want a new world order. One, this is your choice. One world government. This is open society. This is the United Nations, whatever you want to call it. One world government. They have lots of money, lots of power, and they have NGOs, non-governmental organizations. They're getting that one done. They're organized. This is the caliphate if you're in Iran or Turkey. This one is the United Islamic Nations. This is the one the Muslim Brotherhood is going for now. But it all look like this. It's a new world order. You know, and they're organized too. They have the religion and the mosques and apparently help from Google as well, at least in Europe, in Egypt. And then you have this one, workers' union, or they call it state capitalism. Really what it is just good old-fashioned communism. They have the unions and community organizing. Now there's one point of view missing from this board. I think that would be the order where we're all free and it's not this, or this. But they're organized. They're moving forward. As George Soros told me, there is already, the ship has sailed and it is moving on. Really, has it? Well, these three are sailing. Tonight we're going to focus on this one, the 12th Imam. Look out. Today, hello America, hello. We got something really, really exciting for you, very exciting for you. We have tonight something that is going to probably hack off a lot of people. Oh, Jesus. And we have 12th Imam. And it's going to be about the end of times as the way people who follow Jesus and the people who follow the 12th Imam. Really, this is really to see how the people like Ahmadinejad and the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood view the end of times, or the way the world is, where it's headed. It's kind of spooky. The story that everybody should be focused on today is not the Kardashians or anything else. The one that should be on everybody's mind is happening today in Wisconsin. Unions are marching and protesting budget cuts close to $3 billion to close that hole. The unions claim that the cuts will affect teachers, but it's not the everyday teacher that this story is really all about. It's about the people looking to create chaos on the backs of the worker when the world's focus is on Egypt. This is the State House. It's a mess. Striking teachers have shut down schools for the second consecutive day. And now unions are actually marching on the home of the governor, Scott Walker. Michelle Malkin, thankfully, is focusing her attention on this and has unearthed pictures and signs and videos that are dominating the protest. Comparisons of the governor with Hitler, Mubarak, claims that he is a dictator. Oh, look, he's got a little Hitler mustache. Oh, look, isn't that... stop the Walker. Dictate death to tyrants. Ooh. This is from the same people who are so upset about the rhetoric in this country that they promised us a new tone, wanted to ban things like this. But yet they're doing it. One dictator to go. The big names of the hard left all are aligning in support of the protests. Of course, you have Michael Moore, who's just like you, calling Wisconsin the new Cairo. Do you remember Robert Creamer? He was the convicted felon who wrote the blueprint for our health care reform while in jail. Here's what he has to say today about Wisconsin. Now the streets of Madison look like Tahrir Square in Cairo. For the same reason, Walker has become the Mubarak of Wisconsin, seeking to deny his people a basic human right. You've got to be kidding me. And what does our president have to say about all of this? Watch.
I haven't followed exactly what's happening with the Wisconsin budget. I've got some budget problems here in Washington I've had to focus on. Some of what I've heard coming out of Wisconsin, where you're just making it harder for public employees to collectively bargain generally, seems like more of an assault on unions. Public employees, they're our neighbors. They're our friends. These are folks who are teachers, and they're firefighters, and they're social workers, and they're police officers. You know, they make a lot of sacrifices and make a big contribution, and I think it's important not to vilify them.
Is it important to point out that we shouldn't vilify the people who are comparing the governor of the state to Mubarak? The problem here is we have put ourselves into a box. The financial pressure that is coming is going to mean that demonstrations, protests, God forbid riots, and maybe worse, are coming. And there are those that want to see it happen, revolutionaries. The severe financial trouble, combined with the high level of organization in states like New York, California, and Illinois, make it possible that similar events will happen there. Florida and Ohio has pending legislation that might bring the same reaction. And while we in America have always tried to navigate these protests with as little violence as possible, those who are dealing with their own unions in their own countries aren't really so lucky. Remember, our media and our president continue to tell us that Egypt was a magical fantasy land of peaceful protest for democracy.
What we ended up seeing was a peaceful transition, relatively little violence, and relatively little, if any, anti-American sentiment, or anti-Israel sentiment, or anti-Western sentiment.
Really? Really? That is fascinating. You know, I got to plug my phone back in because I gave up on them calling. You should call me, Mr. President. We'll plug it back in. No anti-American sentiment? May I just play Christiane Amanpour? Because I know you watch her because she's fancy pants. Go ahead, play her.
We hate American, we hate any country more. Okay, go to any place more. Because we are hate you. We hate American.
Okay, he hates American. Did he miss that? And not anti-Jewish. We have new details tonight from the New York Post about the sexual assault of the American that we told you about last night and the supposed jubilation in Cairo. The victim was surrounded by 200 men who, while they were sexually assaulting her, were chanting Jew, Jew, Jew. Incidentally, she is not Jewish, but does it matter? Jimmy Carter tells us also there is no need to worry at all about the Muslim Brotherhood.
I've known members of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have ties to Hezbollah in Lebanon and also to Hamas, whose headquarters are in Syria. I think that the Muslim Brotherhood are not anything to be afraid of. They will be subsumed in the overwhelming demonstration of desire for freedom and true democracy, and I would say a secular or non-religious government that we saw in the demonstrations in the last 3 weeks. And so there'll be one of many parties to run, and I don't think there's any likelihood at all of them prevailing and establishing Sharia or Islamic law that would prevent the demonstrators' desire for peace and freedom to be realized.
Can I tell you something? America, there's not enough Jack Daniels on planet Earth for me to drink to have him make sense. There's just not. I couldn't get drunk enough to go, you know what? That guy makes perfect sense. There's just not enough. There's not. PolitiFact says that my statement about the Muslim Brotherhood wanting to go to war with Israel is false, despite the fact that we showed you the words of Youssef al-Qaradawi. Love that guy. He's rated the 9th most influential Muslim on earth with an audience of 60 million people a week. And Der Spiegel refers to him as the voice of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood. Quote, he hates Israel and would love to take up arms himself. In one of his sermons, he asked God to kill all the Jewish Zionists, every last one of them. I love the tape that we played for you several times of the voice of the Muslim Brotherhood who says he'd like to kill the Jews from his wheelchair. Oh, Allah, help me do it. Yeah, but don't worry, there's no anti-Semitism happening there. The one thing that's being completely ignored in the media about Egypt is the fact that the protests are still going after 5 days. Wait a minute, hang on. Mubarak left. Why is this still going on? Unions. Unions. Ha! The region is still on fire. Let's look at just some of the headlines here. I like this one. Brotherhood role rising in Egypt. Yemeni protesters battled government loyalist. 40 hurt. In sharp reversal, U.S. agrees to rebuke Israel in Security Council. That one made me proud to be an American. Protesters, police clash in Iraq. 1 killed. Libya reports 14 killed across several cities. Pro-anti-government supporters clash in Tehran. As Mideast sees 3 dead in Bahrain, bloodshed. UN chief Ban urges to end the violence in Bahrain. This is fantastic. You know, there's a lot of people, well, some of them are in Wisconsin now, that's saying we need Egyptian-style protests in the street. Well, I bet you that Katie Couric would disagree with that. I bet you that Anderson Cooper would disagree with that. I bet you the guy from ABC would disagree with that. The guys here at Fox would disagree with that because they were there. They were there. Most of us are not, thank God. This isn't a video game, America. This is real life. What is it like to be in the middle of, let's say, Bahrain, the latest violence? This is audio from Miguel Marquez from ABC. Listen.
I just got beat rather badly by a gang of thugs.
He goes on with his voice wavering, saying, these people are not messing around. Well, they are certainly people in all of these situations fighting for real freedom. There are also others with more power and a much different design. In Iran, while all of this is going on, there is a caliphate conference we told you about last night called the International Islamic Unity Conference. Today in Iran, they are taking credit for the uprising in Egypt. Here it is. But it is so obvious that religious motives were behind these movements, and the uprising were inspired by the Islamic Revolution of Iran. The popular uprisings in Egypt and Tunisia started from mosques. Motivation. Motivation. That is vital to understand when you're dealing with people who thrive on chaos or want a new world order. What's their motivation? Well, that's what we're going to focus on tonight. We're going to focus on another log on the fire of chaos. It is the 12th Imam. The 12th Imam. Most people don't know who the 12th Imam is. If you watched the program yesterday, we told you a little bit about the concept of the 12th Imam. Specifically, we're talking about fringe beliefs held by a small fraction of Islam. In this case, these guys. This is the president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, and this is the Ayatollah Khomeini. President Ahmadinejad is kind of a spooky dude. I've been watching this guy for about 6 years. And what brought him to my attention was his talk of the 12th Imam. I want to give you to what honestly will amount to a Twitter-length history of Islam in 1,400 years. Of 1,400 years ago, the Sunnis and the Shias. This is Sunni, this is Egypt, this is the Muslim Brotherhood, and this is Shia, this is Iran. These are the two extremes of Sunni and Shia. The Shias believed that only direct descendants of Muhammad should rise and lead the world's faithful. The Sunnis believed that any worthy man could lead. Well, over time, the Sunnis have become the majority of the world's Muslims. President Ahmadinejad, however, is a Shiite. But he's not your normal Shiite. Neither of these guys are. They are an extreme version called a Twelver. For many years, I was told that, no, they don't belong in that. They're not Twelvers. I said, listen to their language. No. The stories of the first 11 imams are generally just historical in nature. But the 12th Imam is more supernatural and mystical. And this is where things go awry. The 11th Imam dies in the year 874. The 12th Imam, who is just a little 7-year-old boy, goes into hiding because they're hunting him. Well, it is believed that he hid himself in a well underneath a mosque, which is blocked by a gate. It is now one of the most sacred sites in Shiite Islam. He was never found. A little boy, the 12th Imam. So, the 12th Imam, they believe, will eventually come back in the last days. How do you know when you're entering the last days? Well, it's, quite honestly, it's almost like how do you know when Jesus is coming back? It's 7 years of nightmare, and it's just growing problems. It's chaos, and it's war. But once that ends, the infidels will have been defeated, and the mullahs will rule over a peaceful Islamic world. Now, a lot of Muslims believe elements of this storyline, but the big thing separating people like President Ahmadinejad and your average Muslim is the idea that Ahmadinejad and the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood believe that they can hasten the return of the 12th Imam or Mahdi. The equation is really pretty simple. For the 12th Imam to return and bring an Islamic paradise, you have to have chaos, lots and lots of bloodshed. So, when Ahmadinejad says, let me help hasten the return of the promised one, that means create chaos. So it will bring on the end times, which brings on the 12th Imam. That's the end game that he's looking for. Now, the story sounds ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous to you. It sounds ridiculous to me. I don't believe it, but it's not whether you or I believe it or not. It's whether the people who are running the biggest state sponsor of terrorism on earth believe it. Whether the people that send warships through the Suez Canal believe it. It's whether the people putting the world on edge with a budding nuclear program believe it. President Ahmadinejad actually ran for, this sounds ridiculous but true, actually ran for mayor of Tehran with a 2-point platform. First plank in his platform, I'm going to improve traffic around the city. Second plank, I'm also going to hasten the return of the promised one as mayor. He then secretly ordered an urban reconstruction to take place to make it easier for the Mahdi to get around town if he were to return. And since becoming president, he has poured an estimated $17 million to renovate the mosque, which houses the well, from where the Mahdi will materialize. He's even trying to build a direct train route from the area of the well to Tehran. I mean, you wouldn't want the 12th Imam to have to change trains. I mean, he's got business to do. Chaos. How does this apply to us? Well, we only need to understand that governments like Iran aren't making decisions under the same kind of incentives that we are. America, our allies, what we have left, and honestly many of our enemies over the years still strive for their own version of peace, stability, and prosperity. But Iran's government isn't motivated by those same things. They want chaos. They want panic. They literally pray for the strength to hasten the return of the promised one. They need the meltdown so their extreme vision of the future can finally come to earth. It's easy to dismiss him, but don't. President Ahmadinejad said this week, The final move has begun. We are in the middle of a global revolution managed by the dear 12th Imam. The Great Awakening is unfolding. One can witness the hand of the Imam in managing it. And then there is this.
Let's support goodness and the majority of people who are good, and the embodiment of absolute good. That is the Imam of time. Hasten the arrival of Imam al-Mahdi, and grant him good health and victory, and make us his followers and those who attest to his rightfulness. O God, hasten the arrival of Imam al-Mahdi, and grant him good health and victory.
He does this all the time. Most people in America don't know the story of the 12th Imam. Most people don't understand its relevance. Tonight, you will. And you can call these people crazy, because I do. I think they're nuts. But do so at your own peril. Last time we discussed the words and the words coming from Islamic extremists, and we blew them off. We were taken off guard by the worst terrorist attack in our history. Are we going to ignore those words again? Or will we take the people who say they want to kill us at their word and pay attention? All right, America, tonight we are going to go on a very touchy subject. I mean, it's a Glenn Beck program. What do you expect? You're going to hear things that you agree with all the time? Tonight you're going to hear things that you agree with and disagree with, and you're going to be pushed hard. If you are a Christian or a Muslim, both of these are probably there are going to be different points of view, and so they're going to probably hack you off. But I don't always say what I want to say. I say what I think we have to. Don't take anything at face value. Do your own homework. Make your own decision. This is information you need to know, and we're all people here, so we have to try to get it right, but know that it's going to push you to the limits. Tonight I'm going to show you the apocalyptic version of Christianity and the Twelvers in Iran, and also the people that believe in the extreme ends of the Mahdi out of the Muslim Brotherhood. And it's not good. I want to introduce you to Joel Richardson. He is the author of The Islamic Antichrist. How are you, sir?
Very good.
Good to see you. And also, we're going to talk to Zuhdi Jasser. He is a practicing Muslim and a physician, also the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and he's going to join us in just a few minutes. But I wanted to start here with Joel and talk a little bit about the 12th Imam and the Mahdi as understood by Ahmadinejad and also the nut jobs at the top of the Muslim Brotherhood. Same basic guy, right?
There's a difference with regard to how they emerge onto the world scene, but once they arrive, they're essentially the same individual.
The Twelvers believe it's the 7-year-old. Is he going to come back as a 7-year-old, or does it matter?
I believe he comes back as an adult.
As an adult, okay. And the Mahdi is not the 7-year-old for the Muslim Brotherhood, but he does the same things.
He's an individual that comes back and just emerges out of humanity in order to elevate the Islamic world, to bring the Islamic world together and cause Islam to be victorious throughout the earth.
Okay, first let me go on this, because we have some comparisons of the book of Revelation and then the story of the 12th Imam or the Mahdi. And it is, America, it will blow your mind. It will blow your mind. Let's start first here. Let's start with chaos. Why would anyone want chaos?
According to Islamic tradition, it is out of chaos that their Messiah, the Mahdi, would emerge onto the world scene.
Okay, that is the same basic story that Christians believe. It's going to be a 7-year tribulation. It's going to be nasty for 7 years. And bloodshed, there's not going to be anybody left, really, towards the end. And then the Messiah comes. Right?
Delivers the earth, redeems the earth, restores creation,
right,
and delivers his people.
Okay. So it's the same kind of chaos we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Both stories have the beheadings of people in it, right?
Right.
Okay.
The Bible says that the method whereby the Antichrist would kill his enemies, Jews and Christians, is through beheading. And then, interestingly enough, it's Islam. It's actually in the Quran. It says, strike the necks of the infidels. Some translations say, behead the infidels. Okay. Islam has this rich tradition of beheading their enemies.
But these guys believe that the 12th Imam is coming if they create enough chaos. So in other words, wash the world in blood, because I don't know if, do you know of any Christian sects that believe they can hasten the return of Jesus by creating chaos?
No, they can pray.
Yeah, okay. But this would be, so you can kind of understand, this would be like some kind of extreme crazy Christian who is like, hey, you know what, Jesus is coming, so let's just get it all over with. What do you say? We go start slaughtering people, so Jesus will come back and split the mountains, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So when Ahmadinejad says, help me hasten the return of the promised one, what does he mean by that?
Essentially, the method that they believe that they can hasten the return of the Mahdi is to attempt to carry out the things that he will do. So they're pushing for the unification of the Islamic world. And some of these radicals believe that by initiating global chaos, that they can force the hand of Allah, force the hand of God to make the Mahdi emerge.
So the best case scenario is, he means that by saying, I want a global caliphate.
Best case scenario, and in the midst of that, we have to consider the fact that you cannot separate that from the destruction of the state of Israel and the Jewish people.
Okay, back in just a second. Tonight, it's big boy time. Tonight is not an episode that you casually watch and take out of context like Media Matters does. Tonight is one that you have to look at and really ask yourself, wow, is this true? Is this true? Do your own homework. This means nothing if you take it from me or one of my guests. You have to know what is true. This is one that... you know, I wouldn't recommend that you ignore the crazy statements of Timothy McVeigh or Jim Jones or Charlie Manson or Osama bin Laden. They all had crazy statements, and then they followed through with it. Usually people who say they're going to kill you, they usually mean it. We don't in the West understand people that are like that. We don't understand the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood who believes in using children as bombs, or Ahmadinejad who believes in hastening the return of the 12th Imam through chaos. But we must understand that kind of thinking if we are to survive. Tonight, you must consider the unthinkable. Watch this.
I think that there's no question that in this time of chaos throughout the Middle East, Iran is trying to establish themselves as sort of the leader of the Islamic revolution.
They believe that the 12th Imam, the Islamic Messiah, will come at a time of chaos, a time of great confusion in the Middle East. The Iranian leaders are rapidly pursuing the missiles and the nuclear weapons capability that will create the additional chaos and carnage into which the 12th Imam is supposed to come.
We have to know about the 12th Imam because he's important to the people who seek to do us harm. Every speech that I've ever heard Mahmoud Ahmadinejad give, almost at the beginning of every speech, talks about the 12th Imam, gives him credit for guiding him and helping him.
Oh God, hasten the arrival of Imam al-Mahdi.
Oh God, hasten the arrival of Imam al-Mahdi.
In your speeches, you pray for God to hasten the arrival of the hidden Imam.
When the Imam arrives, all of these problems will be resolved.
When he calls for the hastening of the return of the Mahdi, he is asking for that Messiah to return and bring peace and establish Sharia law, but that can only occur when there is an atmosphere globally of bloodshedding chaos. What circumstance could bring about the kind of bloodshedding chaos that would usher in the reign of the Mahdi more quickly than by using a nuclear weapon against the nation of Israel?
They need to annihilate Jewish Christian civilization as we've known it. Why then would they give up their nuclear weapons program?
It's hard for people to understand, especially for Westerners. It's hard for them to understand fanaticism.
Our leaders in this country have not been honest with the American public as to who the enemy is.
Certainly American political leaders can think, look, this 12th Imam stuff is ridiculous, that it's you know, mythical, it's fanciful, it doesn't mean anything. However, the issue is that the leaders of Iran believe it.
There is an opportunity now for us to demand from the elected leadership that they be open and honest about what we're confronted by, and then that they take active steps to protect America from this.
All right. I have done research on this for several years, for five or 6 years, and just finished a one-year research project on it. It was just finished 2 weeks ago, and it's called Rumors of War, and you need to see it at glennbeck.com and arm yourself with information. Joel Richardson is the author of The Islamic Antichrist, and Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is a practicing Muslim and physician. He is also president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. I'm going to go to Zuhdi here in a second, but Joel, I want to come to you first, and you take me through this chalkboard, because America, this is going to freak you out, and don't take my word for it. Don't. I'm telling you, everybody's going to... I can't wait to read the headlines in about an hour. This is amazing. Do not take my word for it. Joel, take me through. This is the Jesus side. This is what's in the book of Revelation of the Antichrist. This is the general story in case you don't know anything about Christianity. End of the world, Jesus comes back, but this is the story leading up. This is the story of the 12th Imam, or the Mahdi. And this is, to see if the story... I did this about 5 years ago, and about wet my pants when I finished the research on it. Let's go here. Take us from the beginning. Here's what the Bible says the Antichrist does.
Yeah, on the left-hand side, you have the bad guy of the Bible. He primarily persecutes God's people, the Jews and the Christians.
The Imam.
He likewise causes Jews and Christians either to submit to Islam or be killed.
Where do you find this?
It's abundantly found throughout the Islamic sacred traditions known as the Hadith.
Okay. The Antichrist rules for 7 years, according to the Bible. The Mahdi, or the 12th Imam,
according to Islamic sacred tradition, also rules for a period of 7 years.
Makes peace with Israel, breaks the peace treaty halfway through.
Yeah, on the biblical side, the Antichrist then invades the land of Israel, conquers the land of Israel for his antichristic powers. On the Islamic side, the Mahdi also invades the land of Israel, and as they would say, takes it back for the Muslim world.
Okay, wait until we have to take a break. We're going to come back, and wait until you get to the mark of the beast. Next.
Under attack.
Back with Joel Richardson, and we're going through the end of times. This is the Bible side, and this is from the Hadith, which the 12th Imam, or the Mahdi, and we're showing the 12th Imam, or the Mahdi, and the Antichrist. Kills Jews and Christians, rules for 7 years, Peace with Israel, breaks peace. The Imam, peace with Israel, and breaks peace. Global seat set up at the Temple Mount. Kills and beheads non-believers. The 12th Imam kills and beheads non-believers. But then you get to the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast, and Christians believe that you're going to get some sort of a number and you're marked.
According to the Bible, the mark of the beast is a mark that is put on the foreheads that essentially condemns someone to hell. On the Islamic side, the Muslims have picked up on this tradition, except in Islamic tradition, the beast is a good guy. And he marks the foreheads of all true Muslims. And so, in essence, Muslims are desiring that they would receive the mark of the beast.
And who's the beast? The Antichrist, or is...
The beast, according to Islamic tradition, is a literal beast that comes up out of the earth.
Okay, so Ahmadinejad, when he says the 12th Imam, he wants this guy to come.
He wants the Mahdi.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Hasten the return of this guy. In both stories, it ends the same. I mean, it's very similar all the way through. Jesus returns. But this Jesus, we know, splits the mountains and says, hey!
On the biblical side, Jesus returns to deliver his people from having been defeated and crushed, persecuted, beheaded.
Right. And here?
On the Islamic side, the Muslim Jesus returns and tells the Christians of the world, you've had it wrong all along, your Bible is corrupt, I never claimed to be the Son of God, I never died on the cross, Islam is the true religion, follow the Mahdi.
Okay.
Or die.
Let's say, America, that you don't believe in religion, you don't believe in any of this stuff. Somebody went back, you say man just made this up. Man wrote this and man wrote this, but somebody intentionally did the reverse. I'm assuming that this is all in your book, right?
Yes.
And I'm assuming there's more in the Hadith than just this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Does the story veer off at all? Or are they still basically the same stories? Just one is the polar opposite.
Yeah, in a general sense, they are precisely polar opposites.
No mistaking that Ahmadinejad, Iran, the Muslim Brotherhood, they're looking for this guy to come.
Yeah, they would not call him the 12th Imam. They are awaiting.
They call him the Mahdi.
The Mahdi, yes.
Okay. Back in just a second. With Dr. Zuhdi Jasser and Joel Richardson. And Zuhdi, I want to come to you because you're a Muslim, a practicing Muslim, a good Muslim, a Muslim reformer. You're a friend of mine and a person that I've trusted for a long time because you have been out on the front line saying, this is not Islam and we have to rat out the nasty ones. So, would you agree, first of all, with Joel's description of what the Twelvers and what the Muslim Brotherhood are looking for in the Mahdi? Is this true to the Hadith that they are looking at?
Yeah, I think that you know, the Brotherhood and the Shia, that sect that you talked about, they want to bring back that end of times theology to bring that chaos, and they feel they're a vehicle from a megalomaniacal perspective of doing that, and they each have their own versions of it. But moderate Muslims, like my family and others, feel that it's the opposite. We want to try to prevent that's just a story to teach our kids to prevent that chaos and immorality that leads to that decadence. And that's why our organization wants to separate mosque and state, because when they get combined like Iran, it becomes a toxic mixture that can lead to fascism and the theological perspective.
Okay, so hang on just a second. So then you would say that what is, you're saying that in the Hadith, this is in the Hadith about this character, this Mahdi. And this is what he does.
Well, you see, one of the issues is that Muslims all agree that the Arabic Quran is our scripture, and the Quran talks about a few signs of the end of times, but most of the details you gave are from the Hadith, which are descriptions of the words of the Prophet. Now, reform, I think, is going to happen in Islam when we start to discard parts of the Hadith that are not legitimate, that have been fabricated, and this is where there's some disagreement.
Okay.
So some of these stories come out of, I think, illegitimate Hadith, but others may be legitimate.
You would say that this is like, is he saying that this is like, for Christians, this is like the Gnostic scriptures? He is saying that, but they haven't been edited out. That's his argument. Would you agree, Joel, that that's how Christians could understand what he's saying?
Most Orthodox Muslims would say that this is sacred scripture that you cannot discard. He's essentially saying it's discardable.
Right, okay. So, would you agree with that, Zuhdi?
Well, I'll give you an example. Hamas's charter has an end-of-times quote that talks about kill a Jew behind every stone.
Right.
I was taught that hadith is garbage. That's nothing the Prophet ever said. So there is disagreement, and there are a lot of projects by Muslims that are trying to counter that.
Okay, so let's just agree that whether it's added by man later or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's in there, as he's pointed out now. Some say that was added later by man. But if that was, then, Zuhdi, you realize that somebody made the other side, and that so you are intentionally, whoever wrote that, intentionally is taking the opposite, the polar opposite of the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, and that for those of us that are working to reform, to bring our faith back to its roots of the same God of Abraham, of Judaism and Christianity, is that the industry of radical Islam has been about hate, hell and brimstone, trying to scare Muslims into submission into these fascists like Ahmadinejad, and the reform, I think, will happen from families like mine and most Muslims that teach our kids love, teach our kids societies based in compassion, love your neighbor, that these are just metaphors for trying to have Muslims believe that God judges us, that the day of judgment and this eschatology that we're discussing has some type of relevance, but it's not ours, that this is God's decision to make, and anybody that interferes becomes God, and that's forbidden.
Back in a minute. This the beginning tonight of what I hope is a long journey of learning on your part. This will require an awful lot of research and an awful lot of questioning. From New York, good night, America.